practicing with a metronome. It's something that I've been wanting to talk about for a long time. I often don't introduce a metronome right away for this very reason, because I really feel that most people do not know how to practice with the metronome. Many people think that the metronome is there for you to, match up with it, right? So you kind of have to know, you have to kind of follow it, right? It's your job to be with the metronome. And in my opinion, I really don't think so. I think that the metronome is there as a guide, right? That we need to internalize, and then therefore we don't need the metronome anymore. So we are basically listening to the metronome, now putting that beat inside of us, and then we are able to actually predict when the metronome is about to click. So I'm going to give you an example of that. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. So if I were to clap with that, right? So then now, if I were to completely turn the volume off, okay, so now I'm going to look at it. And then I'm not going to look at it. And then you guys can judge, right, if I stayed with it or not. So I think I did a pretty good job staying with it. I just watched the tape back and it looks like I rushed a tiny bit, but overall I did okay, right? So then we want to maybe, try doing it on our violin after we've done that several times and we really feel like we've internalized the beat. And then maybe we can just play, simple, quarter notes to try it out. So why don't we do that right now? You guys can be the judge to see if I did it correctly or not. So then you can take the piece of music that you're working on. I would do this at the very final stages when you feel super comfortable with the notes and maybe you've memorized it already. It's like a couple weeks before the concert, maybe, I don't know, whatever timeline you're on. I guess it would vary. And then try it out with this. So I'm going to try playing a bit here. When I'm practicing is, right now I'm trying to show you, so I'm trying to point this in your direction, but when I'm practicing, what I would do is, first of all, I would go ahead and take the metronome, right, and turn it on so that it is, so I can hear it, okay. I would obviously be looking at it, I would be practicing, I would be playing with it. And once I feel I've really kind of ironed out all those places where I tend to rush, all the places where I tend to get behind the beat. So you always have to notice, if you haven't practiced it with the metronome yet, then there's definitely going to be those places you tend to get a bit faster and slower, and you didn't realize it until you measure yourself up with the metronome. And once you've gotten that, then you can go ahead and, turn it on, right? But maybe very faintly, like that, okay? And then sometimes I actually don't look at it. I kind of put my ear by it and then I practice. And I actually walk out of the room. So I leave the room while I'm playing, right? And I try to keep it going, and then I come back, and then I look at it and I can hear it a little bit now, because over there I couldn't hear it. And then I see if I stayed with it or not. Sometimes you have to stay with it longer, and then once you feel pretty like you've internalized the beat, then you walk away, right? You can maybe just walk away a little bit, come back and try it. So that's the concept. You don't have to do it that way, but the idea is first you train yourself, you find out where those spots are where you tend to rush or lag, and then you try to internalize it, and then you try to kind of test yourself to see if you're staying with it or not. Now, another reason why I don't recommend metronomes for people at certain stages in development is because it sort of makes the player play mechanically, right? So what I recommend is then once you know how to play straight, then you put it away and then you add those nuances back in, because there's definitely many places in music, even though you're trying to be very strict, like Bach, you know, if you're rushing all the time, or if you don't have a steady pulse, it really dies and falls apart. As soon as you play very, very in time with the steady pulse, the music automatically comes to life. It's amazing. Especially I noticed this with Bach and Mozart, like classical and Baroque music, especially unaccompanied Bach, where you don't have an accompanist, you're just by yourself. It really shows whether the person has worked with the metronome or not. Now, once you do that, there are definitely many places where the music has to breathe, especially at cadences, or, you know, when you want to express certain notes or shapes of phrases, and that's a whole nother video in itself. But then you want to, you know, add those things in. When you need a little bit of a hybrid moment where you want the metronome, but then you want to ignore it, and so then you put it on medium volume, and then you can listen to it and then ignore it, right? And then listen to it and then ignore it. So that's kind of where the compromise can be if you really need to practice that way, where you need to be steady in certain moments and then you don't want to be. So those are just a few ideas to get you started, but the main concept that I really want to stress to all of my students and even fellow colleagues, teachers, to train the student not to try to follow, because you can really hear when somebody's trying to follow a metronome. It sounds very different, and it does help, but in the end it's not giving the 100% training that the performer needs, right, to get ready for the performance. I think we can get a lot more out of metronome work if we adopt this concept into our practice and into our teaching.